The auction block fell silent as she was dragged forward, her wrists bound and her eyes defiant despite the tear tracks staining her dirt-smudged cheeks. Serena Keller had never imagined this would be her fate when she'd left Boston 3 months ago, yet here she stood in Willow Creek, Wyoming Territory, 1872, being sold alongside horses and cattle like she was nothing more than property. "Next up, gentlemen," the auctioneer called out, his voice carrying across the dusty town square. "A fine young woman, good for cooking, cleaning, and whatever else you might desire. Strong back, pretty face. Starting bid at $50. Serena's stomach lurched as leering faces peered up at her. Her father's debts had led to this, his gambling problem finally catching up to them both after his death left her with nothing but his unpaid loans to a ruthless creditor. From the back of the crowd, a tall figure pushed forward. Broad-shouldered and sun-bronzed, he moved with the easy confidence of a man who knew the land and himself. Blake Xavier's piercing blue eyes narrowed as he took in the scene, his hand instinctively dropping to the revolver at his hip. "I'll give you 75, called out a portly man with yellowed teeth. 100, countered another. Blake strode forward, boots kicking up dust. "This isn't right," he said loudly, his voice cutting through the growing bids. "She's not livestock," the auctioneer sneered. "She's property against unpaid debts, Cowboy. Legal as can be in these parts. Now step aside unless you're bidding." 125, called a voice from the crowd. Blake reached the auction platform and locked eyes with Serena. Something passed between them, recognition of shared humanity in a place where such things seemed forgotten. 150, someone shouted. Blake turned to face the crowd, his stance wide and challenging. "She's priceless," he announced, voice carrying across the square. "And she's mine." Murmurs rippled through the onlookers as Blake pulled a leather pouch from his vest and tossed it to the auctioneer. $300. Twice your highest bid. Deal's done. The auctioneer weighed the pouch, eyes widening at its heft. With a nod, he handed Serena's binding rope to Blake. "Sold to the Cowboy." Blake didn't take the rope. Instead, he stepped onto the platform and untied her wrists himself, his callous fingers gentle against her skin. "No one owns you," he said quietly, for her ears alone. "I'm just getting you out of here." Serena stared at him, suspicion warring with desperate hope. "Why would you help me?" "Because no person should be sold like cattle," he replied, guiding her down from the platform. "My ranch is 2 hours' ride from here. You can work there if you'd like, paid fair until you figure out your next move." With the crowd dispersing, disappointed bidders casting dark looks their way, Blake led her toward the livery where his horse waited. Serena walked beside him, painfully aware of the stares following them through town. "I can't repay you," she said. "Not $300. Blake helped her onto his horse before mounting behind her. "I don't expect repayment, Mississippi. Keller. Serena Keller. Blake Xavier," he replied. "And truly, I don't want your money. Just couldn't stand by and watch what was happening." As they rode out of town, Serena felt the weight of her circumstances pressing down. She was dependent on the kindness of a stranger, a handsome stranger, but a stranger nonetheless. His arms bracketed her as he held the reins, and she couldn't help but notice the strength in them, the way he smelled of leather and pine. "Why were they selling you?" he asked after they'd put some distance between themselves and town. Serena stared at the horizon. "My father died 3 months ago. I discovered he'd borrowed heavily from a man named Victor Holloway. When I couldn't pay, Holloway said I'd work off the debt." Her voice tightened. "He brought me west by train, telling me I'd be a housekeeper. I realized too late what he really intended." Blake's jaw tightened. "Holloway. I know the name. He's got holdings throughout the territory, none of them honest. He'll come looking for me," Serena said. "You've made an enemy today, Mr. Xavier." "Wouldn't be my first," Blake replied. "And I prefer just Blake." They rode in silence for a while, the landscape opening up around them, vast plains giving way to rolling hills dotted with pine and aspen. Eventually, a sprawling ranch came into view, nestled against the backdrop of distant mountains. "Welcome to Sundance Ranch," Blake said as they approached. "It's not much, but it's home." It was more than Serena had seen in weeks, a large main house built of sturdy logs, a barn, bunkhouse, and various outbuildings. Cattle grazed in the distance, and smoke curled from the main house chimney. As they dismounted, an older man emerged from the barn. "Blake! We weren't expecting you back until tomorrow." "Change of plans, Samuel," Blake called back. "This is Miss Serena Keller. She'll be staying with us for a while." Samuel's weathered face creased with curiosity, but he simply tipped his hat. "Madam, I'll let Mrs. Wilkins know to prepare a room." Blake led Serena toward the house. "Samuel's my foreman. Mrs. Wilkins is our cook and housekeeper. There's also 4 ranch hands who stay in the bunkhouse. It's a big operation for one man," Serena observed. "It was my father's," Blake explained. "He passed 2 years ago. Been trying to keep it going since." The main house was surprisingly comfortable inside, with polished wood floors and simple, sturdy furniture. A woman in her 50s emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. "Mrs. Wilkins, this is Miss Keller. She'll be staying with us." The woman's kind eyes took in Serena's disheveled appearance without judgment. "Let's get you settled, dear. I'll draw a bath and find you some clean clothes." An hour later, Serena sat at the kitchen table wrapped in a borrowed dress, her damp hair hanging down her back. The warm bath had washed away the dirt of travel and captivity, but not the uncertainty of her situation. Blake entered, having changed into a clean shirt. "Feel better?" "Much. Thank you." She hesitated. "Mr. Xavier Blake, I appreciate what you did, but I need to understand what happens now." He sat across from her. "Like I said, you're welcome to stay and work if you'd like. Mrs. Wilkins could use help with the house. Or if you prefer outdoor work, we can find something suitable." His eyes were direct, honest. "Or if you want to move on, I can arrange passage to wherever you'd like to go when it's safe." "Safe?" "Holloway won't take kindly to losing what he considers his property. Might be best if you stay out of sight for a while." The reality of her situation crashed back over her. "I've put you in danger." Blake shrugged. "Holloway and I were never going to be friends anyway. Man's been trying to buy my water rights for a year." Mrs. Wilkins placed steaming bowls of stew before them. "Eat now, worry later. You both need sustenance." Over the meal, Serena learned more about Sundance Ranch. Built by Blake's father 30 years earlier, it had grown into one of the most successful cattle operations in the territory. Blake had been running it alone since his father's death, turning down numerous offers to sell. "What brought you to Willow Creek today?" Serena asked. "It seems like Providence that you were there." Blake's expression darkened. "Holloway's been buying up small ranches all around us. I went to speak with the banker about a loan for some struggling neighbors." He paused. "I was too late for them, but I got there in time for you." That night, in a small but clean bedroom, Serena stared at the ceiling. The soft bed was a luxury after weeks of hardship, but sleep eluded her. Everything had happened so quickly. Boston seemed a lifetime away, the proper society life she'd known, the music lessons she taught, all gone in the blink of an eye with her father's death. Over the next few days, Serena found her place at Sundance Ranch. She helped Mrs. Wilkins with cooking and cleaning, and despite the housekeeper's initial protectiveness, they soon developed a warm rapport. Serena's upbringing hadn't prepared her for ranch life, but she was determined to earn her keep. Blake was often away from the house, working with the cattle or riding the boundaries of his property. When their paths crossed, there was an easiness between them that surprised her. He never treated her like property or a burden but as an equal worthy of respect. A week after her arrival, Serena was hanging laundry when Blake approached, leading a gentle-looking mare. "Thought you might like to learn to ride," he said. "Properly, I mean. Not just sitting in front of someone else." Serena eyed the horse warily. "I've never ridden before." Boston ladies take carriages. Blake smiled, a rare sight that transformed his serious face. Daisy here is the gentlest horse on the ranch. Even my 8-year-old niece can handle her. You have a niece? My sister's girl. They live in Denver now. There was a story there, but Blake didn't elaborate. So, what do you say? Want to try? The afternoon sun was warm as Blake taught her the basics: how to mount, how to hold the reins, how to communicate with gentle pressure from her legs. His hands were sure and steady when he needed to correct her posture, and Serena found herself acutely aware of each touch. You're a natural, he said as she completed a slow circuit of the corral. I think Daisy deserves the credit. She laughed, patting the horse's neck. She's ignoring my mistakes. Good horses do that, Blake replied, his eyes crinkling at the corners. They see the best in us. Something shifted between them that afternoon, a barrier lowering, a trust building. As they walked back to the house, Blake speaking of his plans for the fall cattle drive, Serena realized she felt safe for the first time since her father's death. That night at dinner, with the ranch hands joining them in the main house as they did every Sunday, the atmosphere was lively. Stories were exchanged, laughter flowed, and Serena found herself drawn into the warm circle of this makeshift family. Miss Keller, I hear you've taken to riding, Samuel said. Blake says you're a quick study. Serena smiled. He's being generous. I'm still terrified of anything faster than a walk. You'll get there, Blake said from across the table, his eyes meeting hers with quiet confidence. Later, as the men retired to the bunkhouse and Mrs. Wilkins to her room, Serena and Blake found themselves alone on the porch, watching the stars emerge in the vast Wyoming sky. I never thanked you properly, Serena said softly. Not just for saving me, but for treating me with dignity afterward. Blake's profile was strong in the fading light. No need for thanks. It was the right thing to do. Still, most men would have. She trailed off, unable to voice the alternatives. I'm not most men, he said simply. After a moment, he added, my mother was Cherokee. She taught me that all living things deserve respect. My father loved her for her spirit and wisdom. His voice softened. After she died, he made sure I never forgot her teachings. Serena absorbed this revelation, understanding better the man beside her. They sound like remarkable people. They were. Blake turned to her. What about your family? Besides your father? It was just us, Serena replied. My mother died when I was young. I barely remember her. Father was a professor of literature, brilliant but impractical. The gambling started after mother died. She sighed. I taught piano to support us, but it wasn't enough in the end. You play piano? Blake asked, interest sparked in his eyes. I do. It's one of the few things I truly miss. The next morning, Blake was gone before dawn, riding out with Samuel to check on a distant part of the ranch. Serena went about her day helping Mrs. Wilkins preserve the summer vegetables from the kitchen garden. He watches you, you know, Mrs. Wilkins said casually as they worked. Who does? The older woman gave her a knowing look. Blake. I've known that boy since he was knee-high to a grasshopper. Never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. Serena felt heat rise to her cheeks. He saved me. That's all. Mrs. Wilkins hummed, unconvinced. Blake Xavier has carried the weight of this ranch, his father's legacy, and his own private burdens for too long. Since you've been here, he smiles more. Serena didn't know how to respond to that, so she focused on slicing apples for preserving. But the words stayed with her throughout the day. Blake and Samuel returned late, dust-covered and grim-faced. Serena was helping serve dinner when she overheard their conversation with the ranch hands. Fence cut in 3 places, Blake was saying. Cattle driven off. Has to be Holloway's men. We can ride out at first light, offered one of the hands. Track the herd. Already sent 2 men, Samuel replied. But that's not the worst of it. He glanced toward the kitchen, lowering his voice. Serena moved closer, straining to hear. Holloway's put out word he's looking for a woman, offering a reward. Description matches Miss Keller. Blake's voice hardened. She's not going back to him. Never suggested she should, Samuel replied. But folks are talking. Won't be long before someone makes the connection. That night, unable to sleep, Serena crept downstairs for a glass of water. The house was dark and quiet, but a sliver of light showed under the door of what she knew to be Blake's study. She hesitated, then knocked softly. "Come in," came his voice. Blake sat at his desk, a map spread before him, a glass of whiskey at his elbow. He looked up, surprise registering at the sight of her in her nightdress and robe. "I couldn't sleep," she explained. "I heard what was said at dinner." Blake sighed, gesturing for her to sit. "Holloway's not a man who gives up easily." "I'm putting everyone here in danger," Serena said, anguish in her voice. "Perhaps I should leave, go somewhere he won't look." "And where would that be?" Blake asked gently. "Holloway has connections throughout the territory. Alone, you'd be vulnerable. And here, I make you all vulnerable." Serena met his gaze directly. "I won't be the cause of harm coming to you or anyone at Sundance." Blake stood, moving around the desk to sit beside her. "Serena, listen to me. Holloway and I were headed for conflict with or without you. He wants my land, my water rights." This just brought it to a head sooner. But no. His hand covered hers, warm and reassuring. "You're not alone in this. Not anymore." Something in his tone made her heart flutter. Their eyes held, and for a moment, Serena thought he might lean closer. Instead, he squeezed her hand once before releasing it. "We should both get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow will be a busy day." The next weeks brought increased vigilance to Sundance Ranch. The men rode in pairs, always armed. Blake insisted Serena stay close to the main house, though he continued her riding lessons in the safety of the corral. Despite the tension, life settled into a rhythm. Serena's skills improved not just riding, but cooking alongside Mrs. Wilkins, tending the kitchen garden, even learning to shoot a rifle under Blake's patient instruction. "You're a good teacher," she told him one afternoon as they walked back from the makeshift shooting range. "You're a willing student," he replied. "Makes all the difference." Their conversations had grown deeper, more personal. Blake spoke of his childhood, divided between two worlds: his father's ranching life and his mother's Cherokee traditions. Serena shared stories of Boston, her music, the dreams she'd had before everything changed. They were crossing the yard when Samuel rode in hard, his horse lathered with exertion. "Blake!" he called, dismounting quickly. "Riders coming. 6 of them. Holloway's men by the look of it." Blake's expression hardened. "Get everyone to the house. Samuel, tell the men to arm up but hold positions unless I signal." He turned to Serena. "Go inside. Stay with Mrs. Wilkins." "Blake, please," he said, his eyes intense. "I need to know you're safe." From the window of the main house, Serena watched as 6 riders approached the ranch. Blake stood his ground in the yard, flanked by Samuel and 2 ranch hands, all visibly armed. The lead rider was a tall man with a shock of gray hair and an expensive suit that seemed out of place on horseback: Victor Holloway himself. Serena's stomach twisted at the sight of the man who'd brought her west under false pretenses. Though she couldn't hear the conversation, the body language was clear. Holloway gestured expansively, likely making demands. Blake stood solid as stone, one hand resting near his holstered gun. When Holloway pointed toward the house, Blake stepped forward, putting himself directly between the men and the building where Serena watched. The tension was palpable even from a distance. One of Holloway's men moved his hand toward his weapon, and instantly every Sundance man drew. A tense moment passed before Holloway raised his hands in a placating gesture, saying something that made his men stand down. After more conversation, the visitors turned their horses and rode away. Only when they were distant figures on the horizon did Blake, and his men holstered their weapons. Serena met Blake at the door. "What happened? What did he want?" Blake's jaw was tight with anger. "He claimed you stole from him. Said he paid good money bringing you west, and I owe him compensation." "That's absurd." "Of course it is. It's just an excuse." Blake ran a hand through his hair. "He wants my water rights. Offered to forget about you if I sign them over." Serena felt sick. "And if you don't?" "He threatened to bring the sheriff next time. Said he has papers proving his claim on you." Blake's eyes were fierce. "It's all lies, but he has influence with local law. What are we going to do?" Blake took her hands in his. "I have a plan. But I need to know you trust me." "I do," she said without hesitation, surprising herself with the truth of it. His eyes softened. "Good. Because I may have just told Holloway we're engaged to be married." Serena's mouth fell open. "You... What?" "I told him you came west as my intended bride, that we met through correspondence." "Said Holloway's men must have mistaken you for someone else when they put you up for auction." Blake's expression was apologetic. "It gives us legal standing if he tries to claim you're his property. A woman promised in marriage can't be claimed for debt." "That's quite a story," Serena managed. "It's just for show," Blake assured her quickly. "Just until we can deal with Holloway permanently." Something like disappointment flickered in Serena's chest, which she immediately tried to suppress. Of course it was just for show. What else could it be? That evening, Blake called everyone together to explain the ruse. The ranch hands took it in stride, while Mrs. Wilkins cast knowing glances between Blake and Serena that made Serena blush. "So when's the wedding, boss?" one of the younger hands joked. "Let's focus on the matter at hand," Blake replied evenly. "Holloway won't give up easily. We need to be prepared for his next move." That night, Serena found sleep even more elusive than usual. The thought of being Blake's fiancée, even in pretense, stirred emotions she'd been trying to ignore. In the weeks since coming to Sundance, her feelings for him had grown from gratitude to admiration to something much deeper and more complicated. Dawn found her in the kitchen, baking bread to settle her thoughts. Mrs. Wilkins found her there, covered in flour and kneading dough with perhaps more vigor than necessary. "Troubles, dear?" the housekeeper asked. Serena sighed. "I'm just worried about bringing all this danger to Blake's door." Mrs. Wilkins measured coffee into the pot. "That man has faced worse than Victor Holloway and come through standing. Besides, I think he considers you worth the trouble." "It's not real," Serena said quietly. "The engagement. It's just to protect me." Mrs. Wilkins lit the stove. "I've known Blake since he was a boy. He doesn't do anything halfway. If he called you his fiancée, even as a ruse, there's truth in it somewhere." Before Serena could respond, Blake himself entered the kitchen, bringing the scent of morning air and leather with him. He paused at the sight of Serena, flour dusting her cheeks and hair coming loose from its pins. "Morning," he said, his voice rougher than usual. "You're up early." "Couldn't sleep," she admitted. "Thought I'd make myself useful." Mrs. Wilkins busied herself at the stove, pointedly giving them space while remaining within earshot. Blake lowered his voice. "About yesterday. I'm sorry if I overstepped. It was the only solution I could think of in the moment." "It's all right," Serena assured him. "It was quick thinking. Still, I should have discussed it with you first." Their eyes met, and something unspoken passed between them. Blake stepped closer, reaching out to brush a smudge of flour from her cheek. His touch lingered, warm against her skin. The moment was broken by Samuel's arrival, bringing news that two of their hands had tracked the missing cattle to a box canyon 10 miles east on land recently purchased by Holloway. "We'll need to get them back," Blake said, reluctantly stepping away from Serena. "Samuel, gather the men. We ride in an hour." "You're going after Holloway?" Serena asked, alarmed. "We're going after our cattle," Blake corrected. "If Holloway or his men are there, we'll deal with it legally," I've already sent word to the territorial marshal. The men prepared to ride out, checking weapons and provisions. Serena followed Blake to the barn, anxiety building in her chest. Be careful, she said as he saddled his horse. Holloway isn't an honorable man. I know. Blake turned to her, his expression serious. Stay close to the house. Mrs. Wilkins knows what to do if there's trouble. Impulsively, Serena stepped forward and placed a hand on his arm. Come back safely. Blake covered her hand with his own. For a heartbeat, they stood frozen, the air between them charged with unspoken feelings. Then Blake bent down and pressed his lips to hers, a brief, tender kiss that ended too quickly. I will, he promised, his voice husky. Serena watched them ride out, her fingers touching her lips where she could still feel the pressure of his kiss. Whatever happened next, nothing between them would be the same. The day passed with excruciating slowness. Serena tried to occupy herself with chores, but her mind kept returning to Blake and the danger he might be facing. Mrs. Wilkins did her best to distract her, but as afternoon faded into evening with no sign of the men, even the housekeeper grew visibly concerned. Night had fallen when they finally heard horses approaching. Serena rushed to the porch, straining to see in the darkness. Relief flooded her as she counted the shapes, all their men returning, driving a small herd of cattle before them. Blake dismounted stiffly, and Serena saw he was holding his left arm at an odd angle. You're hurt, she said, hurrying to him. It's nothing. Bullet grazed me. A bullet? Her voice rose with alarm. What happened? Blake allowed her to lead him inside while the other men took care of the horses and cattle. In the lamplight of the kitchen, Serena could see the blood stain on his sleeve. Holloway's men opened fire when we found the cattle, he explained as Mrs. Wilkins brought bandages and hot water. No one was expecting a peaceful resolution, but they fired first. Anyone else hurt? Mrs. Wilkins asked as she helped Serena remove Blake's shirt to tend the wound. 2 of Holloway's men wounded. None of ours, thank God. Blake winced as Serena cleaned the graze on his upper arm. The marshal arrived just as things were getting bad. He's holding Holloway and his men in the town jail on charges of cattle rustling and attempted murder. Serena's hands trembled slightly as she bandaged his arm. So it's over? Holloway's finished in this territory, Blake confirmed. The marshal had been building a case against him for months. This was the final evidence he needed. With Blake's wound tended, Mrs. Wilkins tactfully withdrew, leaving them alone in the kitchen. Serena remained close, unable to move away now that the danger was past and the reality of almost losing him settled in. I was so worried, she admitted softly. Blake's good arm came around her waist, drawing her closer. I promised I'd come back. Blake, she began, finding courage in the intensity of his gaze. What happens now? With us? The pretend engagement. Who says it has to be pretend? He asked, his voice deep and serious. Serena's heart thundered in her chest. What are you saying? Blake took her hand, his calloused thumb tracing circles on her palm. I'm saying that from the moment I saw you on that auction block, something changed for me. I told myself I was just doing the right thing, but it was more than that. His blue eyes held hers. I've fallen in love with you, Serena. These weeks, watching you find your place here, seeing your strength and kindness. I can't imagine Sundance without you now. Tears pricked at Serena's eyes. I love you too, she whispered. I've been afraid to admit it, even to myself. After everything that happened, I didn't trust that I could have something so wonderful. Blake cupped her face with his good hand. You can. We can. If you want it. I do want it, she said, her voice growing stronger. I want you, this ranch, this life we could build together. This time when he kissed her, there was nothing brief about it. His lips claimed hers with the certainty of a man who had found what he'd been searching for, and Serena responded with all the love that had been growing in her heart. When they finally parted, Blake rested his forehead against hers. So, Miss Keller, will you marry me? For real this time? Serena smiled, joy bubbling up within her. Yes, Mr. Xavier. For real and forever. 3 months later, Serena stood before a mirror in what was now her bedroom at Sundance Ranch, adjusting the simple white dress Mrs. Wilkins had helped her sew. Outside, the ranch was transformed for their wedding, flowers from the late summer garden adorning every surface, tables set for a feast, and a small but meaningful gathering of friends waiting in the yard. A knock at the door announced Mrs. Wilkins. It's time, dear. Everyone's ready. Serena took a deep breath, smoothing her hands down the front of her dress. I'm ready too. The older woman's eyes glistened with unshed tears. You look beautiful. Blake won't know what hit him. They walked together to the porch, where Samuel waited to escort her to the makeshift altar under the large oak tree. Music drifted through the air, a surprise Blake had arranged, bringing a piano all the way from Cheyenne for her wedding gift. As Serena walked toward her future husband, she marveled at the journey that had brought her here. From the desperation of that auction block to this moment of pure joy, it seemed impossible, yet wonderfully real. Blake watched her approach, love evident in every line of his face. When she reached him, he took her hands in his, squeezing gently as if reassuring himself she was truly there. You look perfect, he whispered. The territorial judge, a friend of Blake's father, performed the ceremony with dignified simplicity. When it came time for their vows, Blake's voice was clear and steady. Serena, from the moment I claimed you were priceless, I knew in my heart it was true. You are worth everything to me, every risk, every struggle, every joy. I promise to cherish you, protect you, and love you for all the days of my life. Tears blurred Serena's vision as she spoke her own vows. Blake, you saved me in every way a person can be saved. You gave me freedom, purpose, and love when I had lost hope. I promise to stand beside you through whatever life brings, to be your partner, your comfort, and your joy for as long as we both shall live. When the judge pronounced them husband and wife, Blake gathered her into his arms and kissed her with such tenderness that the guests broke into spontaneous applause. The celebration lasted well into the evening, with music, dancing, and feasting under the stars. As night fell, lanterns illuminated the yard, casting a golden glow over the gathering. Blake led Serena away from the festivities to a quiet spot overlooking the ranch. In the distance, cattle grazed peacefully, and the mountains stood sentinel against the darkening sky. Happy? He asked, his arm around her waist. Completely, she answered, leaning into his embrace. It feels like a dream. It's real, he assured her. All of it. This land, our home, our future. Serena turned in his arms, reaching up to trace the beloved lines of his face. Who would have thought that terrible day at the auction would lead to this? Blake caught her hand and pressed a kiss to her palm. When I said you were priceless, it wasn't just words. Some things in this life are beyond value, Serena. Finding you is one of them. Under the vast Wyoming sky, surrounded by the land they both now called home, Serena and Blake sealed their new beginning with a kiss, two souls who had found in each other something truly priceless, something that was theirs alone, forever.